What's up, nerds, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch and Overwatch League. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 226, we'll be taking a look at the recent health buffs that hit retail servers since our last episode, and we got another slew of roster apocalypse changes going on within the Overwatch League, on top of the return of a very important event for Tier 2 Overwatch. So before we get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Edar, and Ed. We've known for a while now. It's gonna be a little quiet on the Overwatch front outside of like F5 season. That trend has essentially continued. And some of the Overwatch League announcements have been coming in increments. Some of them have been coming in waves. And some teams just haven't announced really anything. So it's like we've kind of seen all of these Overwatch League announcements on the entirety of the spectrum at this point in time, where it's just like, well, what are some of these teams doing? You're like, I don't know. It's kind of hard still to this point, knowing that even though a lot of these options have been exercised, or teams have, just declined options altogether to put, players in free agency, like, we still don't know where a lot of people are going, so the rumor mill has kind of been in full swing here.
Yeah, no, it's the rumor mill is plentiful right now. We're getting some, like some teams like have full rosters already, like the Dallas Fuel, have basically a full roster at this point, and it's a damn sexy roster. uh, but and then you have teams like NYXL, where we'll talk about, where they have no one on their roster. It's just pure chaos. There's a lot of speculation on, like, hey, I really wish this person would get picked up by this team. Like, my first thought today, and we'll get into this, is Fury was let go by the Fusion. And I'm like, dude, Fury would be awesome in Washington if they don't re-sign Janu. Like, that would be but like, you're like, oh god, is that gonna work? Is that gonna not work? So it's just one of those things where, this is the best part of the season. It's not the games, it's not the matches, it's like legit the off-season speculation that I enjoy the most.
Yeah, the theory crafting and trying to find the perfect fit or the ideal roster on a team-to-team basis. And part of the problem right now, or something that's like making it a lot harder, is knowing just how many of these teams were essentially running at a loss, obviously due to the pandemic, not having that additional revenue that they would have garnered from the homestand events. And, we've seen some teams go in big. We've seen Envy really doing it for Dallas Fuel, but, that is an esports organization that has a ton of backing just outright compared to even some of the other investors within the Overwatch League. And then we've seen the opposite end of the spectrum where, we've seen teams just outright completely blown up their roster, or just go into more of like a budget type offering so far. So it's a very fine line. Like, we still haven't really seen a good middle ground up to this point. But we will be talking about all of the moves that we have seen here within these past 2 weeks here in just a little bit. In regards to like general Overwatch, really been fairly quiet since the end of the Halloween event. We did see an experimental card come and go, which has already been pushed to live, and that one was essentially just making tweaks to base health of heroes within the game. And this one dropped, it was pretty close to Halloween, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say it was on like the 29th, because I actually talked about it on the last Recall release. So just a quick update on what they did there. We saw tweaks to Widowmaker's base health going from 200 to 175. They increased Symmetra's base shield going from 100 to 125. We also had May's Cryo Freeze restoring 15 ammo per second, as well as them lowering the cooldown of her Ice Wall down from 13, now at 12 seconds. McCree had his base health increase from 200 to 225. We also had a tweak to the Peacekeeper reload time, and that dropped from 1.5 seconds now to 1.2 seconds. We got a couple more here. We got Brigitte base health increase from 150 to 175. Quite a few changes to Baptiste with the primary fire. The recovery time was reduced from 0.45 now to 0.38 seconds. And then they also lowered the damage from 25 to 24 with tweaks to the alt fire, increasing the healing from 50 to 60, and also increasing the fire recovery from 0.8 to 0.9. So that was everything that was in that patch. And, like, going back now, there has been a lot of discussion on our part, for sure, and, just general, like, Overwatch consensus about the overall state of the game and just how the game is currently balanced right now. Hitscan has kind of been hit or miss. Like, I'll be honest, like, that's kind of been the one thing that's always kind of been the eyebrow raiser, because for a while there, the Ashe Dynamite was just through the effing roof, and then I tried to buff McCree a little bit, which worked okay, but then I didn't nerf the Dynamite, and then Ashe was still, like, everywhere. Then they nerf Ashe's Dynamite. They keep buffing McCree. Now Widow has less effective health, and all of a sudden we're like, all right, you factor in the soldier changes that they did recently with the recoil, and all of a sudden it's just like, it's a who's who of hitscan heroes within the game. And, it's things like that, it's so curious to be at this late stage of the game and being in this position where we've had some, like, incremental changes, which, on paper haven't been, like, absolutely massive, but, we're continuing to see the trend of the state of the game being in a very good spot. And yes, it did take a while to get there. Yes, there have been more than one occasion where we have had metas or defined metas that people felt like ran way too long. But it's interesting knowing that we're here now, and then, a little bit down the road, when Overwatch 2 gets here, like, can they steamroll that sort of momentum going into the expansion? That's really the big question here.
I mean, you would hope so. But you just don't know what is going on with them. I think the only way for Overwatch to actually, I mean, I don't want to say survive, but to be this as good as it is with all the balance changes that they've been doing to balance it all out, because we haven't gotten a new hero in flipping forever. And the reason is they had to push back Overwatch 2. They planned on having at least three to six new heroes in the game right now, because Overwatch 2 would be out right now. Like, let's be real, it would be out right now if it wasn't for COVID. Damn you. So like hopefully we have seen a decline in the balancing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because they think everything's all good, or if they're just like, they're ramping up for everything else to come with Overwatch 2. I don't know, but hopefully they can continue this momentum.
Well, I think the difference there is there have been times in the past where the dev team has felt very confident in the state of the game balance-wise, and then you have the community outcry just completely detracting that opinion. Mm-hmm. Whereas right now, I'm not seeing the same sort of vibe. Like, it seems like everyone is kind of in agreement, which honestly is kind of a like a scary thought in the first place. But there's only been very small moments in time within the game's life cycle where it's just kind of been an even keel approach across the board here. So it's just like I want to like relish in this moment because for a while everyone was ragging about like, oh, they can't get the balance right. X hero is overpowered. This hero's never getting picked. This player is only good in pro play. This player is only good below gold or silver or whatever. And now it's just like, all right, like we're kind of firing on all cylinders. Everyone's feeling pretty good about the state of the game. And sure, there might be a complaint here and there, but it's not to the extent of the echo chamber of yesteryear or yestermonth or whatever value you want to put there, which is so nice.
Yeah, oh god, that'd be so nice. I will say one thing. I have seen some of the pros complaining about Baguette.
Okay.
The 25 health to Baguette is just but it's the same constant like complainers that are just like, just delete her.
The usual
Like,
suspects.
The usual suspect. So
I'm looking at you, Samito.
God, did I just do that?
Yep, you did.
No, I've been all right. So, and slightly off topic, which I've been known to do. Are you a fan of the TV show Scrubs?
I've seen some, but like that's not. You're missing my demo.
Okay, all right. I will say this: probably the best podcast I've listened to in the past 5 years,
other than ours,
is they have better production than us. They are run by iHeartRadio. And they have a professional like two like assistants to the two hosts. But it's called Fake Doctors, Real Friends. So the two main actors from Scrubs are actual best friends in real life.
Okay.
And they are doing like a watch, like a live watch through of every episode, and it's some of the best things I've ever seen in my life. Okay. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, there you go. That's for all you Scrubs fans out there. Let's talk competitive Overwatch, though. We got a lot here. First up, honestly, something I was not expecting. We have the return of Contenders and the Gauntlet for 2020. So again, obviously due to the pandemic, we are having some online events. We have 4 regional events that are going to be taking place. So 4 events, 4 prize pools, and I know they're doing some matches even outside of that as well. So basically what's happening is throughout December, we're going to be breaking things up to 4 regions. We have one for Asia, South America, Europe, and North America. And, what better time to maybe sign some more free agents in this case? So we have 10 teams in Asia. You got 4 from China and Korea, 1 representative from Asia Pacific, as well as Australia. And there's $150,000 on the line here. And the group stage will be running from December 10th through December 13th, with the knockout stages happening on December 18th through the 20th. So this is going to be double elimination bracket format. And, the top-seeded teams out of China and Korea will be receiving some first-round buys. But, like, if you're South America, right now, you're just happy to still be involved. Like, it always seems like South America and, Australia, too, were just kind of, like, always on the outside looking in. I have not been keeping up with South America Overwatch, so I don't know if, kind of like those super teams are still going, or if they've splintered off, or what the general consensus is on, the talent pools there. But they only have 8 teams playing, and they do have, like, the smaller pool there playing for $75,000. And, like, the big thing here, Ed, is obviously inter-regional competition. This is always something that we are striving for. We always want to see, okay, well, can the NA super teams or the EU powerhouse team actually do good against some of these top teams coming out of APAC, whether it's China or if it's Korea? And, like, it's kind of been a coin toss. It's really been dependent on the teams at the time, dependent on what year it is. We have seen NA teams go into Korea and stomp people. We've also seen NA teams go into like Korea competition and just get absolutely demolished and dumpstered. Like, it's been a
Hmm.
very happy mix. But like, if you're just looking at general pickups that we've seen so far within the Overwatch League during the offseason, obviously it's no surprise that the vast majority of those sign-ins have been Korean players, and that's not something that is going to be changing anytime soon, regardless of what is going to be happening, during this online play in this inter-regional competition. But knowing that, World Cup is basically not happening because, no BlizzCon, uh, and then we're like, all right, well, like the only other major event would have been the Gauntlet, and there was a lot of uncertainty over whether or not
Yes.
this was actually going to be happening. But with the recent push for Tier 2, I'm talking about just more push on the social media front, getting contender skins in game, actually promoting it. So people can tune into the YouTube channel in order to accrue the hours watched in order to unlock said skins in the game. So I can't say like I'm too taken back knowing that we have seen a recent strive to really like push that stuff to the forefront now that there's a new Overwatch League happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can see them doing it. It's just, I hate to say too little, too late, but that's kind of the issue right now is that it's too little, too late. It's great that they brought back, but like nobody has contenders teams. Nobody really knows about many of these players. The only reason you're getting people to watch tier 2 right now is because you're offering in-game items, and most people aren't watching it. They just have it up. I think they need to time these things better because don't promote contenders events when we don't even have Overwatch League rosters.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, we have competition starting December 10th. Like, and we don't know if these people like you want us to watch it, but then those same people, those same like some of the best rosters won't probably be playing. I mean, I think we saw that with was that Fusion Uni in the last one where like half the team like they started it, they made the gauntlet, but then half the team got called up to the Overwatch League, and they go in there with a separate team, and you're just like, you just need to time this better.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what they do. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to buy it, but or like watch it, but maybe.
I'll definitely watch once it gets further into the bracket for sure. Now, that being said, obviously, roster stuff is still happening. We still have announcements coming. And I know on our last episode, we were basically going through the Pacific Conference. So I figured we'll start off, we'll talk about some of the teams that we talked about on our prior episode with like new additions or new happenings on their front.
Mhm.
And then we'll be talking about the other half of the league, going by team, letting you know the current contract statuses, any updates on releases or trades, anything like that, and whether or not there are any other contracts that are still kind of like being determined up at this point in time, because we do have a couple of those as well. All right, so roster moves. Let's talk about the LA Gladiators. A lot has been happening with this team.
Yes.
Most recently, they have signed Shu and Muse. So a lot, a lot of interesting pickups by the Gladiators. I'm pretty sure they also announced like a new GM recently as well. I don't have that in the show notes because we haven't
I
really been
believe so.
talking. We haven't really been talking about like the staffing changes as of yet. But everyone was kind of like, all right, like we've had a fairly consistent support duo here in years past. Maybe they had a little bit of a step down here when you compare them side by side year to year, uh, compared to like the rest of the league. So not quite hitting the same notes, and that did kind of reflect in their overall performance in the Overwatch League as well. But I know you and I were both like when we were looking at the Guangzhou charge changes, and we saw Shu getting dropped. We're like,
What now?
what's happening? Like, oh, okay. Well, like it's just like it was one of those things where I really had to take a moment. I took a step back, and the only thing running through my head was, well, your loss is someone else's gain. And I'm really happy that Shu has found a new home. I knew he would. Like, he's too good of a player to
Oh yeah, there's
just
no way
let
he
walk
wasn't
out of
signing
the
with someone
league.
else.
But like that's the thing too. Like we have seen a ton of like player retirements, so like there's always that like little seed of doubt where like, oh no, like is he walking away too? But no, you still see him play, and I am ecstatic about this change. And hopefully, with all of the changes that the Gladiators have made, they can get back to that position that they were in, and whether or not they'll continue that gatekeeper status that so many people like to throw on them. But I'm loving the changes so far, and I really hope this will be the year that they rebound.
Yeah, especially since the rumor is, and this has not been finalized or anything like that, but it's been heavily rumored that Moth is gonna also be signing with the Gladiators. Now again, that's not confirmed yet, but I mean, first off, Shu Moth, you automatically have the best support line in Overwatch. Like, and then I don't think it's even close at that point. I don't know much about Muse. You probably know more about Muse than me.
Well, I haven't been keeping up with contenders, so like.
But hasn't Muse been around for a few years?
I'm pulling up the Wikipedia. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean I have it open right now. So he was with.
Okay, so he was with 200 MS on loan from World GameStar. His longest run was with Talon Esports, looks like. So he was an
He was with the
player.
Eternal Academy.
And then he went to Eternal after that.
Okay. Well, I mean, he was very hyped coming in, and Nura in chat saying he's a good main tank behind Meg as the best main tank from contenders. I just, again, it's not one of those things where I'm like, I'm that in tune with Korean tier 2 scene. But I know the hype around him is super big, and so to pair him with Space is pretty darn good. So you have a good tank line, you have a great support line in theory, and then you have a DPS line that I think could use some work, but it's not the worst in the world.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of discussions here, today especially, which we'll get into, about good support lines being extremely beneficiary to main tanks who are perceived to be maybe a step behind the rest, as opposed to saying like having a really good main tank with a really good support line. So I haven't seen Muse lately, I'll be honest. Just looking at the Wikipedia, looks like when he was on 200 MG, like the results weren't quite there compared to World GameStar. So I'll have to go back and see like how his run was with WGS. But either way, like main tanks are definitely going to be a hot commodity. It's going to be happening every single year. And I really feel like with them kind of like hanging on to Space here, he's going to be a very integral part of just bringing Muse in and getting him situated, having that sort of like veteran experience on that front line with him. And we've already seen firsthand just like the level of communication and just how approachable Space is as kind of like that mentor. A lot of
Hmm.
people see Space as like one of the better players out of NA. And it's definitely shown in his performances as well. So we'll have to see what's happening there. But there were other changes happening with the Guanzhou charge on the release front. So Ed, why don't you talk about the two players that they actually let go of alongside Shu?
All right, so they alongside Shu, they got rid of Happy and Nero. Like, uh, yeah, okay. This was weird. I don't really see why they got rid of both of them. I mean, there's obviously something behind the scenes we just don't know about. You know what I mean? Um, but I don't know what they have going because right now they just have Eileen as the only DPS,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have Rio and Krong, and then we'll talk about you know Kareev in a little while, but it's I don't know what they're doing there. They need two new DPS now.
Yeah,
Um,
the thing that's always curious about Chinese Overwatch is does only having a select few like Overwatch League teams in that region greatly detract the opportunities for them to be able to join the Overwatch League. Because, like, how many teams out there are going to gamble essentially on integrating a Chinese player to their roster?
yeah,
I really feel like, when you're talking about the Korea to the NA transition, it's a lot easier. Like, we've already seen a lot of, like, bilingual rosters outright, but it hasn't quite found the same success with like the Chinese side of things. So it does kind of make me wonder, like, are we gonna see like more call-ups from like academy teams out of China, contenders, or are they just going to directly try to go Korean? I don't know what the plan is here. I know Happy has been rumored to be signing with other teams. The Nero release to me honestly wasn't that big of a surprise. I feel like that's gonna be another flex DPS that will have no problem finding a home. But I I'll have to wait and see. I want to see some of these Chinese contenders players getting picked up and going to their regional teams. Otherwise, it's just like, how much longer will they keep trying to push in the path to pro if they don't see that window?
yeah. It's it'll be interesting to see what they do here. I don't know. Maybe no, because if they were gonna try and go Chinese, then they would have released more people
Hmm.
and not signed Kareev. So yeah, I'm interested to see what they're gonna do. They have their tank line, they have their flex support. That's about it.
Right on. Next up, we had a trade happening for the Dallas Fuel, acquiring Fearless from the Shanghai Dragons. All right. Element Mystic, whatever number you want to throw at the end of it. Here we go. Okay. We're seeing more and more pieces. And then, Ed, we got Jexay signing with the Dallas Fuel. So you got the support duo, you got the tank duo, you got the DPS. You threw all of this money on the table, whether it was to free agents, whether it was to other teams, to make this shit happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the $1 million question is this going to be Dallas versus Fuel for the 4th straight season, or are they finally going to meet that culmination of their parts? Because, like, I know there's a lot of anticipation here. I know people are excited. I know you're gonna have like that Contenders Korea crowd who are anxious to see a team basically get it restructured and brought back, you know, after a little bit of a hiatus,
Mm-hmm.
from playing on other teams. But it's just like, it's hard to escape that feeling. that, well, we've kind of been in this position before. And it didn't pan out that well. And I know they've made other changes on like the coaching staff. And that's great. Getting Rush along with the Element Mystic Core is definitely something that can sway a lot of people's minds when it comes to the Dallas field going into this next season. But as someone who has seen this team constantly come up short, who like to throw all the money around in the world and just wave it around in front of people, this team does not have the success rate of like the New York Yankees.
No.
Like it has not shown as of yet. And, we still, like, we don't know if that was just a coaching thing. We don't know if that's just Hastro being, a control freak on, in the higher ends of the organization or what it is. But it's just like, if this doesn't work, that is a clear signal that the problems aren't with the actual team themselves, they stem from the top. So, I guess we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, no, it's I think this is going to be a little bit different this time because, well, one, the first time they brought in just the streamer squad, like the popular players, and then they just tried to piece things together and not be very much like you lose Decay because you just don't know how to handle Korean players. I mean, and they aren't good at getting talent. I mean, they had Rascal. They let Rascal go.
A lot of
But I
teams
think
let Rascal go.
a lot of teams let Rascal go. But I think this is a case where it probably will work out for them. I'm not saying they're going to win the league.
Mhm.
I'm not. But when you bring in an experienced coach of Korean players from Element Mystic, and I'm sure he'll fill his assistant coaches with Korean players as well, and you have an all Korean roster who have all played together, who have all succeeded together, then I think it's a different story.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost want to say they go in as a top 5 team next year, barring what everyone else does. But I think they're a top 5 team.
Yeah, like out of all of the teams, like when we're talking preseason rankings, this team is going to be the most curious one to watch because I don't know where the ceiling and the floor is going to be with this team. But preseason rankings are still quite a bit of ways at this point. All right, let's talk about the Philadelphia Fusion. So talking about conference talk here. A lot of stuff not a lot of stuff. Some stuff has been happening. So here is what is known right now with the Philadelphia Fusion. I'll go over who's on the roster, who's been released, and what changes have been made for additions. So first up, staying on the roster, we have Carpe and Hizu. For your DPS, you have Alarm and Funny Astro brought back for your support line. Releases, we have Chipsa, no surprise there. EQO and Boombox. And right now, the only unknown contract-wise, who has a contract coming up, is Poco. Now, we had a couple of announcements today from the Philadelphia Fusion, 2 of which were releases. So they let go of DPS Ivy, which honestly surprised a lot of people. Like if we're talking playoff performances alone, honestly, Ivy was the best player on that team. So that everyone was kind of flabbergasted at that one. And then he also released their main tank Sado, which wasn't too much of a surprise when you factored in the other move that they made, where they acquired main tank Mono from the New York Excelsior. So currently, right now, you got 2 DPS, 2 support players, and a main tank on the roster, with potentially Poco coming back. Or maybe they go and try to get a new off tank. That will remain to be seen. But how you feeling about these changes here, knowing that the Fusion were hyped up to be the super team? They came up short in the long run, and honestly, they definitely underperformed in the
Mhm.
grand finals.
Yes. I will say this, that my guess is, and I think this has been a popular opinion, is the reason they went from Sato to Mono is Sato has been known to be very aggressive and it has backfired a lot on him. Mono is not as aggressive, and I think they want to change their play style a little.
Hmm.
The Ivy thing, I'm confused about. Maybe he just wanted too much money, or he was going to sign with another team. Um, Fury is the one I was confused about. Um, uh, like releasing Fury, I was like, okay, that's a little weird. Um, so now they need to maintain off tank now, and they need to sign at least one more DPS because I don't think Hisu is the option there. So we'll see what happens here. I just don't know, but this is a to be determined type of team.
Right.
I until I see another DPS and an off tank, I don't know what to think of
Yeah, I
what this team is going
wonder
to do.
I wonder if they're gonna be like, all right, well maybe we just try to like reunite Tank Line. Maybe they go out and acquire Meko. Because he is a free agent. I don't know,
What about
maybe
Janu?
Janu's the other popular pick. you know. But I just I think like there's that thought process for me where I'm like, all right, we got like a New York tank going to Philadelphia. Like, would they do that twice? Like, knowing like that's kind of like a built-in rivalry. I don't know.
I mean, I guess it's just I don't know. I'm very confused by some of this stuff. I still think they should have um brought back. I'm still perplexed by Fury.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't get over that. So I'm gonna be annoyed by that one for a while, I think.
Yeah. I'm fingers crossed. Well, actually, like I don't know if Fury would go and reunite with with his ex Spitfire teammates. I don't know. Well, let's see where Fury lands. Like that's a name that I expect to get signed pretty quickly here. Moving on to the Paris Eternal. Obviously, we've had a lot of discussion on the Eternal front, knowing that there's been a mass exodus of the former Element Mystic core to this team.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, we have two players on this roster. You have XZ. He's kind of like the odd man out of the EM core. Very sad. Then you have FD God. So, formerly you have Sparkle, Hobbin, and Fielder, who all went to the Dallas Fuel. They released No Smite and Smex, both of who were on the tank line. And then earlier today, they announced the releases of Nico and Soon, both of which who were on the DPS line, as well as their other main tank, Ben Best. All right, Ed. So obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not one of these EU teams is going to try to build that EU uh, powerhouse or just transition to just a more Europe-based team. But it hasn't. I haven't really been seeing that sentiment echoed a lot with Paris Eternal. For the most part, it has been with the London Spitfire due to the massive success story that has been the British Hurricane and how well they've done out of Contenders Europe. Like, if you're in Paris's position here, where Hurricane are essentially a shoo-in to go and stay within their organization, where the hell does that leave you?
With Paris, I think we can all agree that they're the wild card. Because no one last year was like, you know who Sparkle and Hanbin and Fielder are gonna go to?
Mm-hmm.
Paris.
Right.
And just out of nowhere, you're like, what is Paris doing? And I could see them. You know, I we have to decide what they're gonna do with Ixie.
Hmm.
because that will be the clear indicator. Because if they keep him, then I think they go for a mixed roster. If they get rid of him, they'll probably go for an all EU roster. Um, as much as I like Nico and Soon, I think you could probably get upgrades at this point. Um, so it will be interesting to see where they go. I think from the two remaining players they have, whichever, like if they start to like if they keep Ixie and FD God, then they're going to mix roster. Um, where you never know where they're going to get people from.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's a toss up with them. I like what they're doing, kind of, because I don't think they got the success that they wanted to get out of Sparkle, Hanbin, that whole group, and Dallas probably made them an offer they couldn't refuse. So they get to do a full rebuild without much flack. So it's a very interesting scenario where they're at.
Yeah, I really want to know just how much money was on the table to make those trades happen. Um,
The thing is the Dallas Fuel are backed by Envy,
mhm,
who has been making good money. I mean, their CDL league they won,
right.
so they had some cash,
Well, at least one of their teams worked out. They're just
right?
trying to even the playing field at this point. So a lot of unknowns out of Paris right now. And the same can honestly be said for a lot of teams in this conference. So let's look at the Florida Mayhem. Right now, currently on the roster, you have Yaki at DPS and Gain Namjin on support. They have released Saya Player, who is now playing Pro Valorant under the name Spider. They let go of Chris, Karayan, and Byram. So right now we're waiting on updates, contract-wise, for BQB, Fate, and Gargoyle. Now, one of those three, Ed, is heavily rumored to be signing with the Shanghai Dragons to fill that main tank position that they basically traded off when they sent Fearless over to the Dallas Fuel. So a lot of Fate to Dragons to reunite with Moon discussions going on here as of late, but no confirmation on that as of yet. But this is another team, like, I can't say like any of the releases were like a massive loss for this team. This is another team that has had kind of like tempered expectations. For a while, the Mayhem were kind of seen as one of the more like jokey teams, and it got a little bit more serious. They picked up a lot of Korean talent on a couple of occasions. Didn't work out one time, worked out fairly okay the second time. So now it's just like, all right, are we gonna try? Are we gonna try the Korean route again? Like, is third time going to be the charm? Are we gonna try something completely different? I don't know what to expect from the Mayhem, but at least
Mm-hmm.
we've seen them go from being like this bottom of the barrel team to a team who was semi-viable. Now it's
Yes.
just a matter of what is it going to take in order for them to take that next step forward. Where maybe they won't be like a top 5 team, but maybe they'll be more floating towards like the middle of the pack. Someone that's going to be on more of like the bubble, so to speak, when it comes to contention.
Yeah. All I know is they better fricking bring back Gargoyle, you cowards. Um, I think they'll probably go Korean again. It worked out pretty well. I mean, they're keeping probably the two most important pieces that they've signed, in Yaki and Gang and Jim. And I think they'll bring back Gargoyle, and then we'll see where they go from there. I do believe they're going to go full Korean again, especially if you have those three come back. There's still a lot of good Korean talent out there, obviously. Um, the big thing is going to be, what are they going to do for a main tank? That will be the big issue,
Hmm.
because that is such a vital part, and I'm assuming they'll sign somebody from a contenders team or someone like Sato. You know, bring in Sato, pair it with Gargoyle, and go from there. So it's definitely up in the air, like most teams are. but they have a good core in those two, in Yaki and Gang Ninja,
Mhm.
that are going to work out well for them.
Well, you say there are teams that are up in the air, but there are also teams, Ed, that are like in the stratosphere. like, like there are teams that you're just looking at this and you're just like, there, what's there?
Yeah.
And you take out your telescope. You're trying to find something deep within the galaxy, and you're still just grasping for straws. So Ed, like, what's going on with New York? Because I'm looking at this and I was like,
Everyone GTFO'd. All right, we'll start with people on the current roster for the New York XL.
All right, moving on.
All right, moving on. All right, contracts expiring. We have Libero, Sebaobi, Animo, Jonak.
Mm-hmm.
The former, the ones that we know are gone, are Hoxel, Nene, Who Are You, Bianca, Hotba. Mono, they announced recently, obviously going to Fusion. They also announced they're not bringing back Mondu.
Yeah, and he was under contract too, which is worth pointing out.
Yep. So I mean, I don't no idea. Like, you can't even take a stab in the dark on what they're doing. Are they going to stay Korean? Are they going to go like NA? Or are they going to go mix? What are they going to do? No one knows. No one has any inkling. We haven't heard any rumors. I don't know what to talk about with them because they have no one on their team right now.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple. Like, we can't make assumptions with no information.
Basically, you have clay, right? But like, you don't know how it's gonna get molded. Like,
Basically,
it could just be absolute like a crapshoot for all we know. So what's happening with New York? F if I know. We don't. We have,
yeah.
We are in the dark just as much as everyone else is at this point. And like, if you're a New York Excelsior fan, like, I don't know if it would necessarily be, okay, I'm gonna hit the panic button right this second, but you're just trying to figure out, at least give us updates on, like, these other contracts, and then we'll know for sure, like, do we actually have anyone? Or not? Because that's a big question mark for this team right now. So a whole lot of WTF is going on, and, we'll have to wait and see here. Moving on to Atlanta. All the contract statuses are known at this point for this team. So currently on the roster, you have Edison and Sharp for your DPS. You have Gator and Hawk, the former Academy tank line, still staying on the main roster for your tank line. And then you have Iris and Mazah for your support line. So gone, you have Airster and Saucy from their DPS lineup, Pokebo, as well as FRD from the tank line, and then you have Fire and Dogman, both free agents at this point as well. Alright, Ed, so, like, looking at this, obviously, Airster to me is definitely a pretty big blow. Like, he was definitely my favorite player outside of Edison on this team. And you're looking at the other...
except he wasn't playing.
Yeah, it was one of those eyebrow-raising things where Sharp really wasn't seeing play, and we didn't really get to see the Edison Airster combo as much as we would have liked to see throughout this. But if I'm someone out there and I'm like, you know what, we need a marketable player, right? Like, we need someone that's gonna come in and just troll people on Twitter and be fairly adequate at his position. Like, Dogman, people like to give him shit, right? But there's something to be said about someone that brings that sort of entertainment value or that sort of stigma to your roster, where he's just one of those players who just, like, livens up the place wherever he goes. So I'm really hoping out of everyone there, he's definitely going to get picked up. It will probably still be on the NA side. I can't imagine it's going to be kind of like a split roster or anything like that. But man, the Airster release, though, definitely felt like a gut punch. I really wanted to see them giving him another opportunity here.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if Atlanta's really going to do much more. Maybe sign another DPS, maybe sign another support that could possibly start, but I doubt it. Atlanta seems like they may have gone into budget mode a little, and like they got rid of their high priced people. Like Gator and Hawk, they signed from contenders last year, so they probably have one more year left. Masa, I don't know if Masa's making that much. They got the cheaper of the two, like the two cheapest DPS probably. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like a budget team to me. So I don't know how much more we're gonna hear from them. I think Dogman will get another chance. Erster could, but we don't know what he is like behind the scenes.
Hmm.
He could just be super toxic and nobody wants to play with him. Um, so we'll see there. I just I think they're kind of set with their team a little bit at this point.
Yeah, it's really a question of, all right. So obviously, the returns weren't there for the last season due to pandemic and everything. So how many teams are actually going to be operating at the minimum of having 7 players on their roster versus how many are going to have like a full core? You know, because we've kind of it was kind of like sprinkled all over the place. This past season, we had teams that were running with the bare minimum. We had teams that were fully fleshed out. We just had teams stockpiling like 5 DPS for some strange odd reason. So right now it's just kind of like a who's who. Like what teams are budget, what teams are going all out, and I feel like regardless of what the returns were or were not, that kind of trend is going to be consistent on a season to season basis where we see it at like basically each extent of roster sizes here. So but Atlanta does, like, they didn't really like trade anyone. Like they aren't selling off like a ton of like big name or big value players. So I that could be a sign that they're going to be going budget. Maybe this will be one of the 7-man rosters and they'll just look to find like a star caliber DPS or something to kind of round them out. But that's a team who on paper might not need a ton of work. But you look at a team like the Toronto Defiant, who, okay, for starters, they made a questionable re-sign-in for one. And then they made a ton of releases. So looking at Toronto, we know they did re-sign Logix. I was really happy for that. Then they go out and they re-signed Beast at main tank. And I know a lot of people are looking at this one and they are just like, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that audible gasp or that visual frustration or just state of confusion, and everyone just kind of looking at this and like, he didn't look that good this past season, so like I honestly don't know what to make of that.
Yeah.
But they did get rid of a ton of players here. Gone are agilities. Surefour seemed kind of hesitant if he's returning next season, so
I think he was saying that he's gonna take some time.
okay. They also got rid of Zeke, Mengachu, Nevix, who I think was another player was considering retirement. Numlocked. We have Karib, who got sent over to the Guangzhou Charge. And then Roki, also retired. So you basically got 2 players on this roster currently, a main tank, a DPS. And this is just another one of those teams who, like, I don't know if we're going to see like big spending out of this team either.
Yeah, no, I don't think we'll see big spending. I could see them buying, like, getting people from like the Shock, not the Shock, the Titans from the second half part of the Titans. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe Shockwave, stuff like that. Car. Who knows? I just, it's one of those things where I see them being, I totally see them being a budget team. So like they'll probably sign at least 3 or 4 like, who the hell are these people type of things, like, huh? I don't know who this is type of things, which is sad for Toronto fans. So good, you guys took our Chicago team.
Yeah, Midwest representation.
Yep. Now I have to cheer for the. Well, no, they're not the Chicago Huntsmen anymore.
It's Optic. Hex got Optic back, and that in itself was absolutely monumental for just competitive esports. I was so happy that the Green Wall is back with Hector. And speaking of things that agreed, we got the Houston Outlaws, who, this is another one of those teams where I'm just like, the best part about this is, something you mentioned, before we were on the air, which, we'll talk about here in a minute. Okay, so basically right now on this team, you have Hydration and Dante being brought back. Gone are Meko, Boink, Repel, and Jexay, who's now with the other Texas team, the Dallas Fuel. So we're awaiting contract updates for Blase, Linkser, and Muma. Now, Ed, there's been some interesting tidbits in regards to social media on the Dante and Hydration front. So, for those that haven't really been keeping tabs with Dante, why don't you fill them in on basically what his response was in regards to, the state of the team?
So, somebody on Twitter asked him, what are they going to be doing as a team? Who are they going to sign? When are they going to announce a signing? And he's like, never. Me and Hydration are going to 2-man it.
There you go.
So
apparently that's all you need.
Confirmation from Dante. They're only going to be playing 2 people, and they will probably be better than they were last year. If they re-sign Muma, I'm just going to be like, sucks to be you. Outlaw fans. So this is a team where I was like, man, they could probably just spend, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I was like, maybe they can go and get Moth, spend some money, go get Moth, get that support line kind of shored up, get Moth and Crimzo in there, which would have been a good support line to start off with.
Crims, we saw Jexay go to Dallas. I would honestly not be surprised if Crimzo ends up going to Houston in this case.
Yeah. Crimzo did tweet out all the teams he's practiced for or scrimmed or tried out for.
I did see
that.
And
then Blase called him out. But I'm like, God, just sign Moth and Crimzo. You have Hydration and you have Dante. You can find you can probably get a decent main take out there.
Or they just keep Hydration there.
Or they just keep Hydration. Basically pick up 1 tank. And then you get a decent DPS. To pair with Dante. It's not that unheard of to do something like that. But if you get a Moth Crimzo support line, you're pretty well set for a little while. You have that buffer where what I'm kind of considering the Gladiator buffer, where now their tank line is so good and their support line is if they do sign Moth, is freaking ridiculous. They can have weaker DPS because they have such strong everything else. And that's where Houston could be, but alas, Houston is not doing that. And I'm assuming they're going to sign Shockwave to play with Dante. I'm thinking they're gonna get some scrub main tank or off tank to play with hydration, and then they'll probably sign like Crimzo and one other NA support that is not as that great. Like I could see them doing like Crimzo and Karkar
Or
type of
like
situation,
Paintbrush, potentially.
paintbrush or something like that, but not like they're making like how do I put this? They're making budget deals that aren't necessarily ridiculously cheap, but they're not signing they're signing quality budget, but not that they're gonna actually be a top tier team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're not signing the D squad, the CD squad, but they're signing the B minus squad. This is the best way I can probably put it.
All right, well let's see what's going on over in London. All right, guys, so we got 3 more teams in this conference. So London, a lot of known, a lot of unknown right now. So currently on the roster, you have Glister, Bernard, Sanguinar, and Fuse. Formerly, you have Although, Bobble, Shui, Kleston, Jehoon, J-Mac, Hiley, and Krillin. So, a lot of these C and or D listers no longer on the roster. And honestly, and neither of us are gonna be too surprised by that, obviously, because they didn't do great. Let's be real.
No, they did not.
Neither did teams like Boston, but Boston also is in a weird situation, which we'll get into. But you have Glister and Bernard, who were definitely the standout players. Here we were thinking, all right, if London's going to be spending money, you're dealing those players, right? Looks like they're staying put. So it's just is that virtue signaling that all right, we're going budget again? And if that's the case, it's just this is gonna be an uphill battle, all over again. They took a low risk season. Didn't really see the results, which honestly wasn't really expected. But if your plan is to basically just be all right, we're gonna take our contenders team and just integrate it. I feel like they probably won't really have to go to outside sources at that point, if that's the plan. Just have it be a smooth transition. Obviously you'll still be paying your players. Maybe, they'll get a pay increase. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they'll just get league minimum for all I know. But either way, even if they only take a select, 2 to 4 players from, the Hurricane roster, they're still going to be pretty set in stone at that point.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, none of these players are going to stay on this team. I'm just going to say that. Glister, Bernard, Sanguinar, Fuse, you're not going to be on the team. let's just get that out of the way right now. But they're bringing in the British Hurricane. I think they're going to get a decent contract. I don't think they're going to be league minimum type of they're not going to go the Titans league minimum, because I think the thing is they could probably make more money individually than they could if they made the league minimum. A lot of these players could probably get signed. But so what they'll probably do is they'll probably all get between 75 and 100,000. Something along that lines to play for them, and then there'll be a true EU team who is probably not that bad. Maybe not the best, but there could be some talent there. That is for sure. But they would probably still be a bottom 10 team, regardless of what happens. So I it's gonna be the way I'm picturing it right now is British Hurricane get moved up. Then London decides to not have a contenders team.
Okay.
Save themselves some money that way. And maybe use that money to give them a little bit, the actual Hurricane players a little bit more money to come up to the Overwatch League
Mhm.
as a whole squad. Now we'll know for sure tomorrow. Well, on Thursday, the 12th, because they did announce that they will be announcing their coach tomorrow. So if the head coach is the head coach of the British Hurricane, can you guess what's going to happen next? So watch, they do the complete opposite, and they announce like a Korean coach, and they keep those 4 players and sign like a full Korean squad. We'd be like, what now? And then the British Hurricane move over to Paris Eternal.
Mhm.
So it's going to be interesting. I'm interested to see who they name as coach tomorrow.
Well, I'm just saying. Okay, we've already seen Nucky get called up to be the GM, who was with the Hurricane. Right now, Fisher is the head coach of the British Hurricane. So that's interesting. So it could be another kind of like, player turned head coach for the Overwatch League. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But Fisher kind of took over like mid-August. So
yeah. Huh. Interesting.
We'll have to wait and see on that front. I'm just seeing like who is on that roster and seeing. Let me just double. I'm clicking on all of the players really quick just to see if everyone on that roster is eligible.
Oh yeah, that's
for
another.
the Hurricane. All right, so let's see here. Danid is 22. He's one of their DPS players. Sparker, who's their other DPS, is 17 and turning 18 in June. But they do have Glister. Okay. Hadi is 20, so he's eligible. Molfig is also in his 20s, so he's good. Well, we've seen Kelix in the Overwatch League, so that's a given. Same with Reaper. So basically everyone but Sparker is eligible to get signed basically immediately.
See, there you go.
Should they go that direction, which they probably will.
Which I would assume they will.
Well, no. Have a very good indicator tomorrow.
Yes. Very good indicator tomorrow.
All right, so next up we have the Washington Justice. All right. They held on to Decay. They held on to Tuba. Roar is still maintaining that main tank position, and then they went out and picked up Jerry from the Boston Uprising. So we got 3 DPS now.
Yay, Jerry.
Releases, we have Ark, who retired, Aim God, Janu, and Stitch. All right, so obviously, like, the big discussion entering the playoffs was the Decay trade to the Justice.
Yes.
Whether or not that was against the rules, whether or not that hurt competitive integrity of the league, all of those discussions aside, like, it was very evident the moment Decay was picked up by the Washington Justice that they were going to take that sign-in, and then going into the next season, they were going to look to build around Decay. And I say that, and I realize, Ed, that's a little bit of a contradiction, knowing that they signed someone like Jerry. I get it, guys. Look, I get it. Jerry, he's flashy. He has his moments. We need consistency around Decay. Like, Jerry's not the guy. I hate to break it. Like, that's not the person that I would have looked to kind of be that, like, that complimentary DPS to Decay. And I'm not saying, like, Tuba was great, like, he wasn't, like, knockout amazing or anything this past season. He was alright. But it's just, like, I look at the Jerry sign-in, I'm just like, I don't know what to make of it. Like, I really don't feel like it's monumental of a shift on that team, or enough to warrant being like, alright, that DPS line is shored up now for sure. So I don't know. This kind of has me confused.
I guess it works. Um, like I don't know how it's gonna work, but I mean, you have Decay who popped off. You have Jerry, who is pretty good. You got Roar going in well. There's still so many questions. Are they gonna bring back Janu? I hope they do, or maybe sign Fury. Um, could they just be like, screw it, we're gonna sign Janu and then we're gonna sign Animo and Jonak and have a darn good team at that point. They have no support on their team whatsoever. So, it's great they got Decay and Jerry and they have Roar and all that stuff. I just they need to get a support line in there. The DPS lineup I'm not too worried about because, you know, Jerry I'll take talent over anything when it comes to Overwatch League, and both of them have the talent. And that's where it's needed the most. So they're a team who's like 50% of the way to awesome, and they could be a top 5-6 team with what they possibly have. But they need to get there because they could also go into a bottom 10 team if they sign the wrong ones. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, they found the right meta, they took advantage of it, and Decay carried them as far as it could until it did not work. That's probably going to be the same conversation for this next season. All right, so last up, we got the Boston Uprising, Ed. All right, okay. Here's what's going down on the team right now. Currently, you have Punk and Fusions returning on your tank line. Chex, aka Color Hex, back on DPS. Yunbun did not escape the Boston Uprising. He's back again. Gone are Mikey, Halo, and as we just mentioned, Jerry is now with the Washington Justice. All right, Ed. So I remember pretty recently. I can't remember when this was posted, but there was something on social media from Boston, and where they're kind of talking to their players and about how like Fusions didn't really want to be traded anywhere. He wanted to stick with Boston Uprising. And I remember reading this article, and the only thing running through my head as I was reading this was, yeah, that makes sense. Primarily because I don't think that there was going to be another team out there that would willingly sign you and pay you the league minimum of $50,000. And I kind of also felt the same way about the Color Hex re-signing as well. But it's just like, Boston has had this stigma where it's really hard to disassociate Huck from Boston Uprising. Everyone wants to, bring in the ownership into discussion when it comes to Boston because people hate the Patriots. I mean, that's no secret.
Fuck.
But it's just like, you guys realize how, like, hands-off they are with Boston Uprising, right? Like, it's just like, you're not seeing them being, like, making the decision-making or anything like that, but, they just keep roping them in. Besides the point. But either way, you look at this and you're like, Boston has just constantly been stuck in this rut. And this team at its core is the Overwatch League equivalent of quicksand. You get your feet planted. And, at first you're like, all right, like, my head's clearly above still. They had, like, that really good stage when Krusty was, head coach of this team. And it was a time meta, and, everything's looking pretty good. And then they just kept sinking, right? And then all of a sudden they're below the sand. You know, you have fusions and color hacks trying to like crawl their way out, trying to like dig around them to try to unburrow themselves out of the ground to no avail. So it's only a matter of time at this point, Ed, before they're completely buried again. You know, sand's just getting shoved down their throat. They can't breathe, all that stuff. It's just like it's hard to be an optimistic about this team. Like, I can't honestly look at the move so far and be like, all right, this is a stable enough piece of this team that can keep us afloat or be the core to build around, that's strong enough to keep this team intact. You know, what does Boston really need to do in order to shake the stigma or to be seen as a threat or just honestly just be considered anything outside of, you know, what many fans, and you know, I hate dogging on teams. But
You kind of
more times than not, a team just puts themselves in that position and then they don't do enough to change the dynamic of, you know, how people perceive them. Like, they're just not going to be able to shake that. And I don't care who they got and signed. This is one of those situations where you're like, okay, you need to show me before I can actually start to back you up in any feasible amount. So it's just like, you know, I've talked at length about my issues with Fusions, and you know, he came into the league strong. People read the, you know, they read the book and they just had him figured out early on, and he has not looked good ever since. You know, Punk has a ton of talent.
Yes.
You know, I'm not gonna dog on him, and you know, everyone knows that Myeonbun was the best person on that team as well. So it's just like, it's just like, where do you get the answers from? Because it's not from within your own organization. You just gave away your wild card essentially with Jerry going to Washington, and now I'm just like, all right, we're calling it a day. I'll see you guys in 2022.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just like, Fusions is like, because they probably had to re-sign Fusions, so Fusions is probably like, wait, you want to give me another contract? Like, that's not normal. Like, why are you trying to give me another contract? I'll take it because no one else will give me a contract. But like the thing with the uprising, I think Color Hacks was probably worth another shot. Myungbun obviously would have rather seen him go to a different team. But you know, there's nothing we can do there. And Punk, like you said, has the talent. He does. He does have the talent. So they outside Fusions, they have a decent building stone. But the thing is we know what they're gonna do. Like, we know they're gonna screw it up, because you know they're gonna get like some unknown 50,000 like league minimum per year type of player, and to fill out their rosters, and then, you know, hopefully they get them soon.
Yeah,
and we can get to the, hey, let's bash on Boston.
Yeah, so, you know, looking at this roster, I was like, okay, they just got rid of a DPS. If I'm thinking someone that can be brought in relatively cheap, who has had Overwatch League experience, like, I'm37 is definitely a name that would come to mind.
He has signed.
Has he?
Well, he said he's
Or is he
no
rumored?
longer looking for a team.
Okay, so he's going somewhere, we just don't know where.
Yes.
Okay. My guess is Boston.
I would not be surprised. That seems like a very Boston signing, which would not be a bad signing in my mind. He just got called up way too early, and he
speed ran.
He got thrust into the game and like into the pro scene and it was just too early. It just was. So we'll see what happens.
Sometimes you just need that little extra seasoning on the path to pro. So, well, I'm curious to see what sort of redemption arc he will have, since, even when he was on that path to pro, like, he was playing every single role in a matter of weeks during the GOATS meta. So, I haven't been keeping up with contenders, as I've mentioned, so I don't know how his hit scan is looking nowadays. But that was his prowess. That's what he was known for, essentially. So, that is a piece that they are missing on this team. So I would not be surprised if that will be the direction. But for now, guys, that is everything that has been going down here since our last episode. So, like, these past 2 weeks, obviously, at this point, now that we've kind of gone team to team, we will update you basically with every movement on these following episodes. So, we might have waves, we might have small drops, whatever it's going to be. We'll let you guys know on everything going on in that front. But it is time for us to go ahead and close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, please do us a solid. Head on over to iTunes and write us a review. Let us know how we're doing. We are 226 episodes deep at this point.
Jesus.
That is a lot. And, obviously, with Overwatch 2, whenever that should happen, there is opportunities there for us to pivot. Not majorly, but pivot in the sense of, like, focusing on specific themes for the PvE content that will be coming. So if that is something that you guys would be interested in, please let us know. I mean, we're an open book. Reach out to us. If you guys want to support us directly, you can do so via our Patreon at patreon.com/OWL Network. We do have tiers starting at just $1 a month, and you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons in Daniel, Owl, and Kesha in helping our network grow. And if you should decide to reach out to us, of course, you can do so a number of different ways. So, Ed, please let our listeners know how they can do just that.
All right. So you can reach us through email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. We are on Twitter, and that's at hndoverwatch. We do have a website that's at www.owrecall.com. We do have a YouTube, and that's youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We have a Discord, and that's discord.me/OWLN show. We are streaming live at Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show. We are Twitch affiliates to help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network streams pretty regularly. So on Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific, we have the Overwatch League Network. On Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, we have Heroes Never Die, this show. And then on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, I almost said Thursdays, we have Tavern Tales, which is Totem and I's Hearthstone Battlegrounds podcast over at twitch.tv/TavernTalesHS. You can contact me personally on Twitter, and that's at Ednar83, or on Twitch at twitch.tv/Ednar. Totem, where can they find you at?
All right, well, you can find me over on Twitter. That would be at TumblelyDrunk, as well as Twitch at twitch.tv/TumblelyDrunk. So, just as a reminder, guys, we've basically been doing bi-weekly recordings because been kind of like slow news for general Overwatch. And, because it is off-season, that will mean on occasion we will have, episodes that are more focused on the Overwatch League front. I get that. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but realistically, there's only so much we can talk about, like, in-game happenings if there aren't happenings. That's just kind of like the way
there's not
it works.
any happenings,
Yeah, we've always just kind of like gone with the flow or whatever direction that the news takes it. That's not really going to change with our identity as like a podcast anytime soon. But anyways, guys, I do want to thank you again for joining us tonight for another episode of Heroes Never Die. This has been episode 226. I've been your host, Tumbly Drunk, joined, as always, by my co-host, Ednar. And we'll see you guys either in-game or back in 2 weeks. You take care, and have a good night.
Peace out, y'all.